It's 20 years since the US embassies in Nairobi and Dar-es-Salaam were bombed by al-Qaeda. Almost 250 people were killed. Thousands were left with injuries, some of them horrific. The bombings were the first major attacks by al-Qaeda, the first time many of us even heard of al-Qaeda, and they targeted the United States. Well, afterwards, the FBI placed its leader, Osama bin Laden, on its list of top 10 most wanted fugitives. Memorial services have been held in Tanzania today, where 10 people were killed. And in Nairobi, a ceremony also brought together dignitaries and families of the victims at the city's Memorial Park and Museum. It was built over the foundations of the US embassy that was destroyed in the attack. Well, our correspondent, Ferdinand Omondi, attended the memorial site with one of the survivors.
This is where I was.
A walk down memory lane.
The last window at the back.
20 years ago, a typical office day was shattered by the blast of a truck bomb at this building in central Nairobi, which housed the American embassy. Julie Ogoe was inside when it happened. The force of the explosion flung her body in the air, and when she landed, debris fell on top of her.
I had some deep cuts all over my face. So when the nurses tried cleaning up, I think the blood sprouted out back to the nurse, and she screamed. Then she said, "This girl is going to bleed to death." They stitched us without anesthesia. We were told, "You have to bear with this. There's no time for anesthesia." So I was stitched. Then I was made to sit somewhere. I was telling the pastor, "Please take me home. I don't want to be here." Then he told me, "Julie, your eye is out of the socket." So when I touched, I realized this eye was hanging somewhere here. I think that shocked me. I passed out.
Julie underwent 3 operations, including one in Germany, to save her life. But she lost her left eye. Nevertheless, she counts herself lucky to have survived an attack in which over 200 people died.
I feel like I've lived a bonus 20 years of life. I look at that spring of water, and as it sprouts and goes all around, it gives me hope. For about 3-4 years, I couldn't get anywhere around Selassie or around Harambee Avenue. I kept thinking something will happen. But today, nowadays I can come here. I feel that we are conquering.
This memorial park is now a permanent reminder of Kenya's first encounter with international terrorism, an attack claimed by al-Qaeda targeting American institutions, but in which the vast majority of victims were local Kenyans and Tanzanians. These are the names of the people who lost their lives in the first major attack on Kenyan soil. Since then, the country has endeavored to keep its people safe. But 20 years on, the tactic of terror has become more common. The country has often been in a state of high alert, and hundreds more Kenyans have become victims. On the streets of Nairobi, life continues. Meanwhile, this site, the site which 20 years ago witnessed terror, is now a peaceful place for memories and reflection. Ferdinand Omondi, BBC News, Nairobi.
OK, before I introduce my guests, I just want to let you know that we're going to be showing some images that some of you may find distressing, original archive footage from those bombings. So joining me now to discuss more about the terrorism threat in Kenya and, of course, across the rest of the continent, I've got security expert Richard Tuta speaking to us from Nairobi. Richard, thank you for joining us. We've been looking back on those attacks. It's 20 years on. How has the nature of terror changed in Kenya and also across wider Africa?
It will be wrong to say that the nature of terrorism in Africa has changed, because maybe what has changed, it's not the strategy, it's the tactics that they are using. And these changes is as a result of so many other factors. One of the factors is because of the counter-terror measures that is being undertaken jointly by African nations or by individual nations in isolation. Secondly, is because of technological changes that is happening across Africa. Remember, 20 years back, there were nothing to do with there were no improved communication systems in Africa. Other technologies, like, for instance, internet, were not there, but currently they are there. So these are some of the factors that are contributing to the change in tactics. different terrorist organizations.
Okay, so those are the tactics of the terror organizations. Some people describe that attack as a wake-up call for Kenya. What's the security legacy been of the attack on Kenya?
First of all, you have to look at before and after. When you talk of before the attack, you must also look at how the intelligence, various intelligence communities that were operating in the country, how they were structured by then in terms of various pathologies and peculiarities that they had. And when I talk about intelligence community, I'm not just talking about Kenyan's intelligence community. I'm also talking of the American intelligence community in this country. Like, for instance, before the attack, most of the embassies in Africa were viewed as only centers to collect information, but not to consume information. That is the embassies of the American state. But immediately thereafter, you will see that there have been a total change of this. In the beginning, before the attack, you will also realize that there were no intelligence sharing between the American intelligence community and most of the African intelligence community. These are as a result of issues to do with the trust. And maybe these are some of the things that are drastically changed. Currently, maybe the reason as to why maybe al-Shabaab or any other terror organization has not in a position to carry out an attack is because maybe there is a lot of intelligence sharing.
Geographically, of course, we have seen a definite pattern in terrorist attacks and these terrorist extremist groups. Just succinctly, if you could, how would you describe how that has developed?
You know, when you look at terrorism attack, you don't look at in terms of the numbers of attack. Sometimes you must also look at the quality of the attack in terms of the casualties that comes with the attack. The number of attack might be very minimal, but anytime there is an attack, you should also look at it in terms of the damage that comes with that attack, in terms of the casualty that comes with that attack. And another thing that you must also ask yourself, wherever there is no attack, you should ask yourself, is the terrorist organizations on the run or are they on the move? Sometimes you may realize that there are no attacks, but they are not on the run, they are on the move. And being on the move is that they can still plan and execute an attack. So what we should be asking ourselves currently in Africa is whether all these other various terrorist organizations, whether they are on the run or they are on the move.
Indeed. Quite a place to leave that discussion. Thank you very much, Richard Tuta, speaking to us from Nairobi. Thank you.